Today, I want to welcome Brett Swarts. He is the founder of Capital Gains Tax Solutions. If you're a business owner, one of three things are going to happen. You're either going to go out of business, or you're going to pass the business off to one of your kids, or you're going to sell the business. And if you sell the business, you've got hopefully a ton of capital gains coming your way. Brett helps business owners minimize capital gains tax upon exit. Brett, welcome.
Craig, thank you for having me. Grateful to be here.
First, let me check that. I just kind of made that up on the fly that there were three things that would happen. Am I missing a scenario there?
I think that's pretty spot on, probably for 95% of it. You might sell it to a partner is sometimes the one that gets maybe missed there, or you might sell it where you partially sell it to like a large, company that's kind of gobbling up some of the smaller to the medium sized, businesses, and you might stay on for a period of time. And so it's just sometimes it's a little bit of a mix. You may not be all at once.
Yeah. But, one of the things that I hear, I've talked to a lot of exit planners, and their number one complaint is people come to them and they say, "Hey, I'm going to sell my business this year. I need you to help me sell it." And they haven't been doing the things they should be doing for the last 5 years to get ready to sell it. And I would imagine one of those things is actually having a plan to handle the capital gains tax.
You're spot on, right? I mean, I think that's part of the challenge for a lot of small to medium business owners. They either operationally or with people or systems and process and getting out of the business to even to be able to sell without being the pivotal point that needs to stay on for a long time. It's one of the biggest challenges any business owner faces as they scale. And then of course the other side of it, and that's part of why I think oftentimes they either miss it or just are overwhelmed, that they don't necessarily plan to sell or think they're ever going to sell until a health crisis or a death or divorce or something that is really going to drive that change. And it can happen overnight, and or that call just comes in and you're just like, wow, I didn't realize my business was worth this much, and maybe I do want to sell. And now they're down the road, and then it's just focus on getting it across the finish line. And if they don't plan or have a real clear way to exit with the capital gains tax, then they just end up paying it, which is kind of sad.
Well, and I think one of the problems with the way to think, because there's a lot of people, oh, I'll never sell. And but whether it's exit planning or tax planning, in terms of it, to me, it seems like you should always be building the enterprise value of your company, regardless of whether you're going to sell, because basically, if you don't sell, you're selling it to yourself. The thing that's going to drive the valuation of the company is based on how profitable it is and how much it can run on its own. And I think you want both.
I could agree more, right? I mean, I think we all want options, and I think if you build it to sell, you're probably going to build it in a more, I don't know, proper way is the way to say it, but just you're going to have a clear set of books, clear set of projections and budgets and performance, clear set of CRMs, clear set of contracts, clear set of all of these things that go into making it attractive for a bank to finance the buyer who's buying it, and make it attractive for the buyer to pay an equitable price for your business. And so I think starting with the end in mind, building it to sell it, that is, I think, the wise and the best way to do it.
Now, when they're doing this, I've talked to a lot of exit planners, and they tell me things. I mean, like, here's one of the things that was most surprising to me. They said, don't take a ton of distributions out of your company if you plan to sell. And the reason is investors look at that and they say, oh, you're saying that your business is not the best thing to invest in. You know, the,
Mm.
you're taking the distributions out and you're putting them in, let's say the stock market or something. You're saying the stock market gives better returns than your business. Well, we can go
Mhm.
buy stocks in the stock market, but those are the type of things I hear. I'll be honest, I haven't had a lot of conversations about the tax planning, the exit planning from a tax perspective.
Mm.
Actually, this may be the first I've had. I mean, yeah, I don't think I've had any discussions from a tax perspective.
Yeah, I mean, what's really interesting is it's like you don't think about it until you. Yeah, I think you need it, right? Or the awareness of it. I think is just the business owner is so focused on driving and serving their customers and their passion, right? I think sometimes taxes are an afterthought from your accountant who's filing your taxes to the Section 179 truck that you bought to write off. You might think about that a little bit there. If you happen to be investing in some real estate on the side, you may know about a 1031 exchange to be able to defer some tax. But I think it's just hard sometimes if you don't have a team in place that's helping you have awareness for this. So I think slowing down and being thoughtful are the things that are the things that I think most business owners should do on any major decisions. I think is another way to think about it. And, if you're going to buy another business next door, you're going to make sure you do due diligence. I think you should do the same due diligence on yourself for the exit, for the tax piece.
So you just said something about 1031s. I asked somebody this recently and they didn't really know. Can you take any type of capital gains and process it through a 1031, or does it have to be capital gain on real estate?
So it used to be things like helicopters and jets and business sales, but more recently, in the last couple of years, it's been shrunk down to just investment real estate. And as you know, most businesses, and they might have a real estate component that they can sell, and there's some strategy there that they find surprising that you could attach it more to the real estate and maybe get higher valuation there and a little bit lower on the business is something that's kind of a strategy. And then you can try to 1031 out of that. If it's, within commercial or reasonable types of things, check with your CPA on that. But unfortunately, it's only investment real estate now. So you can only do that. And that's part of the challenge that most of these owners are facing, business owners especially, because they're like, well, if I sell, 20 to 50% is crushed. Maybe I should just hold on. Maybe I should just let it kind of coast, because I can't imagine, the tax being gone on it. So that's kind of the rock and the hard place that a lot of them are faced with.
And for those that don't know what a 1031 is, what is 1031?
Yeah. So think of it as a way for you to trade by selling investment real estate and basically trading it and moving it into another investment real estate property within a short period of time to defer the capital gains tax, to kick the can on the tax. And it's a nice way to build wealth if you can find a deal. Some restrictions. You have to make sure you buy something within 180 days of selling the property you sold, and make sure you identify those properties within 45 days. So you have to follow these timelines, but it's a continuity strategy to continue in owning investment real estate. It's a way for the government to say, you know what, Craig, you did a great job for those 55 units in Austin, Texas. I think you can do a great job with 110 units in Dallas. Why don't you be that landlord that provides great housing? So we'll incentivize you to sell that 55 unit, move up to 110 units and provide housing for 110 people in a meaningful way, right? Mm-hmm. So they tax incentivize you to keep it going, right? Keep it going.
Okay. Interesting. When did they change it to narrow?
I think it was 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. So it's been pretty. I think it was the first Trump administration, honestly, somewhere around there. So I guess it was it's probably like 5-6 years ago.
Huh. Wow. Well, as somebody's running their business, what are some things they should start thinking about?
So if they're planning on exiting, right, just having and doing their research on what options are available. And I think it's good to clarify what matters the most to you for this season of life, right? And this next season of life. The largest wealth transfer in the history of the planet's set to happen now in the next 5 to 10 years, about $124 trillion. There's about 80 million baby boomers in the U.S. alone. Every single day, 10,000 are turning 65. And then there's another stat that says 50% of all wealth in America is tied to high-end primary homes, private equity, which is businesses, and commercial real estate, right? And a lot of the listeners might have a bit of all three of those, right? And most likely they would if they're small to medium-sized, business owners. And so knowing that this transfer, and if you're a baby boomer listening to this, is you're probably in the throes of potentially selling and exiting, and now is a great time to build that momentum plan so that the government doesn't, take 20 to 50%. And so I think that's the thing that's really important for each business owner to be thinking about. Another way to think about it, Craig, if you and I knew that we had a 20 to 50% owner day one when we started our businesses, right? And if there's a way to own it 100% ourselves, we had been thinking of that since we started our business, right? Is there a way for me to strategize this where they don't have to be 20 to 50% owner? But that's kind of like what happens if you don't do the planning. You just weren't aware that they were the 20 to 50% owner the whole time, and they're ready to take their share, their fair share, Craig, right? When you exit, right? So, but with planning, they can be deferred on that fair share, right? Which can be in momentum for your family.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the quotes that's coming to mind as you talk, it's from Sam Walton's book, Made in America. And he found the best way to avoid taxes is to give it away before it's worth anything. And so he divided up the shares of Walmart, put them in a family trust back before Walmart was even public. The impact was there was, when they were publishing the top 10 list, top 10 most wealthy people in the country, there were four of them that were Waltons, and they were each worth like 10 billion exactly. They all had exactly the same net worth.
Good for those kids, man. That actually speaks volumes that they're all worth the same after all these years.
Yeah. Well, they've dropped down and what have you. I certainly don't think the kids have carried on the legacy that Sam had. Walmart used to be a delightful experience. Now it sucks.
That's another podcast. If you have that foresight, for sure. There's another one called QSBS. It's actually a very attractive one. If you can, move your S Corp to a C Corp or just start out as a C Corp in the beginning, own it for at least 5 years. I think it's up to like 15 million now that's tax free. So that's a low hanging fruit one. Like if you feel like you're going to be going for the next 5+ years at least, what could you do now? Talk to your CPA. There's tax consequences, all these different things that are involved with why you do or don't do that. And there's certain limitations for how many employees you can have and different things and different revenues. But for small to medium-sized businesses, most people listening, they probably could qualify. And if you're going to hold it, if it's less than that, then you may get like a portion of that. I think if you do it for half of the time, you can get maybe half of the 15 million tax-free. But that's a pretty sweet one there that I like, to share with people. That's pretty cool.
So that's interesting. I mean, I had an exit out of a C Corp and paid a ton in taxes, capital gain taxes, and it was less, my portion was less than 15 million. Is this a new law or is this?
So I've only really recently learned about it in the past few years, just through my studies for what we do here at our company. But yeah, good question. As far as when it kind of became popular, I would just say, I just have heard and know that it works well, and you can limit it up to 100% of the federal capital gains tax. So I think the state is separate from that. So you have to be aware of that. I think so I would just look that up. Just look it up. And to be quite frank, we don't execute on those, right? This is just something that, I think it's nice to know that there's other options out there if you have a little bit of planning, but that is one of them that we definitely respect, just like we respect the 1031. But we don't necessarily do the QSBS. And so I'm not necessarily the expert there. I just know those are some of the parameters.
Okay. All right. What are some typical strategies for somebody that's exiting their business or to get them to exit their business without getting walloped by taxes?
Yeah. The one that I think is maybe less known is the installment sale method with a trust. Most business owners have probably heard of an installment sale, or they know it's a seller carryback where they become the bank for the buyer. In other words, they can finance the buyer who's buying their business. And this is an installment sale method that goes back over 100 years. The challenge with that is, if you think about it, Craig, like if you sell on an installment, the worst nightmare would be 2 years later, the guy or the gal who bought your business is not performing and you need to foreclose and take it all back again.
Right.
And you're like, oh my gosh, just when I got comfortable, right? And so in other words, you're putting your trust and all of the capital from that, or a lot of the capital, to that new buyer. And then that business that you're selling to get away from. And so, but the concept makes sense, right? You delay paying tax until you receive payment from the actual sale. And so I'll just give you an example. Let's say you had a $10 million business sale in California, and you're going to pay $3.7 million of tax, which would be state and federal, and you had a zero basis, right? If you did 100% carryback with the buyer, meaning you took no payment at closing, all of that's deferred. And let's just say you put a 9% interest rate on that note, and you just get $900,000 a year. That 10 million just keeps working for you in that scenario, and the 900 just keeps coming in. And for a lot of people, they're like, sweet, that's really all I want. I didn't necessarily want all 10 million all at closing to spend on my boat and my home and all these different things. And so I like to just 100% finance it, get 9% coming in every year, live off 900,000, just sail into the sunset. And if that just came every year, and I didn't have to trade the time that or any of the stress that it takes to own a business or run a business, then that'd be great. The downside, again, of course, if you did that with the buyer, is they may or may not pay on time. They may or may not run the business into the ground. You may or may not need to foreclose, secure the collateral to be able to pay you back. But the concept has been there, right? And we know that. And most of the time, people aren't going to finance 100%. They'll finance 20 or 30 or something like that. And most of the time, they're doing it to boost the price, because the bank is only willing to lend at a certain amount. So they kind of cover that gap. And so there's some different things here, but the concept makes sense. And so what's surprising is you can add a trust to this, and, trust are very also maybe not as well known for people. Most people think of trust like a living trust, or for probate, I'm passing my assets. I'm putting them in this living trust so that I make sure that assets are passed appropriately to my kids or my children or wherever. But there's another type of trust called a business trust, where you can combine the business trust with an installment sale method that we were talking about. And you can have a third party trustee, and you can first sell your business to that trust in exchange for a promissory note. And then immediately the trust sells it to the buyer that has the 10 million lined up. Mm-hmm. So it's a simultaneous close, smoke clears, the funds are at Charles Schwab, which can be invested into anything, the biggest companies in the world.
Right.
Could also be invested into other real estate ventures that with the partners, and then you're still owed that 9%, but now your collateral is with Home Depot, Walmart, Costco, whatever, Tesla, Apple, whatever you want to choose, Nvidia, right? And so you're much more secure, right? You're also liquidity. There's liquidity there, right? You also might want to go back and do your own business or own real estate deal, where the trust can be that joint venture partner to go with you on that next deal. In other words, you're no longer tied to the old business, and you're actually diversified, and you actually have, just more freedom to do your next venture.
Wow. It's interesting. I've never heard of these things before, and it's fascinating. Just the different levers. Could you do a combination of the lease back and a trust, or the deferred sale and a trust?
Yeah, the seller carry and also our strategy. Yeah. Or that strategy, right? So the answer is yes. So we've had sales of properties and assets where, let's say 10 or 20% is a regular seller carry, and then the rest of it, let's say 80%, is into this installment sale with the business trust.
Yep.
As a combo. And then that 20% in a year or two or three is going to be paid off, or it's the second buy of an Apple, meaning they sold on a 60-40 deal. They sold 60% of the business, the other 40% they rolled into the new co, right? Yeah. And now that 40% turns into, 3 or 4x. The beauty of this strategy is the trust can receive all of those tranches at different times and issue multiple promissory notes. And so the idea is you're becoming a bank. It's like the bank of Craig Andrews, right? And you lent it to this trust, but you didn't lend it to the ultimate buyer, because you were able to diversify. And every time the new parts of, you can also have other real estate that you sold. You may have some Bitcoin or some stock, all these different assets, but it could be one trust that just keeps receiving and issuing promissory notes, multiple promissory notes, one trust. Slight limitations though. If you're married, you have 10 million per calendar year basically to put into this trust. technically you can do like a deal on 12/28, deal on January 2nd, right? So you could do a little bit of that in this new calendar years, and you can get 20 million, right? There's a second version that's not limited to the amounts. It can be 100 million, $1 billion deal. That's really, it's an irrevocable trust version. And it's to really solve for what's called the debt tax, which is another thing that a lot of small and medium business owners don't necessarily account for, because they mistake the stepped up basis as the way to solve for that. Meaning I just die and kids get stepped up basis and they can do whatever they want. Well, that's true if as long as you're less than 30 million net worth, married, or 15 million net worth, single. But beyond that, you have a debt tax issue. And the show that's brilliant for this, Craig, is if you've seen it, Yellowstone. Have you seen Yellowstone?
Yeah. Yeah.
Remember Kevin Costner? I think it's Mr. Dutton, And there's Beth, and Beth is like, Dad, sell the farm because they're going to kill you. And he's like, I'm never selling the farm. She goes, but Dad, if you don't sell the farm and they kill you, the debt tax is going to kick in. She literally says it. And they're going to take it anyways, because we can't afford $400 million. Imagine it's $1 billion piece of land. We can't afford that tax bill. And they're going to take it anyways. And he's like, I'm never selling the land. And so what Mr. Dutton could and should have done before he died is sold and then move it into what's known as an irrevocable trust that's connected with kind of like an installment sale that would have forever been outside of his taxable estate. Now, it would have taken him selling the land to a third-party buyer and with this trust, but the net result would say, let's say $1 billion in there is forever outside of taxable estate. And so then you have Beth Dutton, who's tax-free when she can be the beneficiary, and whoever her brother was, and whatever, right? Whoever he wanted to put that, they can be the beneficiaries of that. So that's mainly focused on the debt tax, right? That's the main thing there. The payment of which over the time of while the person's still alive would be taxed as cap gains tax and interest as they receive it. So we have there's two main versions that are really attractive for folks if you look at it from that perspective of what you're trying to solve for.
Yeah. Wow. Well, this is really fascinating, Brett. It's, the one thing it confirms, I heard years ago, somebody was selling a company and they had really good lawyers. And they said, there's some areas you want to invest in because they can help you avoid a ton of tax. And it sounds like you help people do that. How can folks reach you?
Yeah, we have a couple resources that I think could be really helpful. You can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com to learn more and about what we do, but also to check out the book, either that or on Amazon, called Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan. We actually have some cool authors co-authored in the book, like Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank has a chapter, and we actually have Tony Robbins CPA in the book too, which is kind of cool.
Nice.
But basically, it's my story of not knowing anything about this as a real estate professional at Marcus and Millichap, doing 1031 exchanges, to the 2008 crash, seeing folks, friends and family lose half or all their wealth, to establishing our company to help people never face the capital gains tax trap, when they exit businesses, Bitcoin, or real estate. So capitalgainstaxsolutions.com is the place. The book is Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan.
Well, excellent. Well, Brett, thanks for coming on Leaders and Legacies.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Craig, for having me.